Soriyama is the last name of the character of this episode of Battle Guides featuring Hikaru. Hikaru is an adaptive brawler who makes use of his amazing unique ability to crush his opposition. However, that does come at the cost of being very poorly ranged, needing resource management, as well as generally being very straightforward. Hikaru's unique ability is Geomantic Assault. Hikaru starts the game off with 4 different elemental tokens. During the anti phase, he may anti one and only one of them to gain the associated effect. Power plus 3 if fire, priority plus 2 if wind, range minus 1 tilde range plus 1 if water, and soak 3 if earth. Note that Hikaru can regain these tokens by making use of a variety of his cards. However, he may not regain the same token that he antied that beat. Hikaru is the first Granddaddy Show token character. This is a keyword or a phrase that we generally use to refer to characters who have 4 tokens, anti them, then can regain them using a variety of their styles, and can't regain the same token that they antied in the same beat. Another example of a show token character is Eric from Devastation of Indines. Okay, so this unique ability is very, very good. Though that might be deceptive. See, all this unique ability does is give Hikaru stats. A lot of good stats. Power plus 3, priority plus 2, range minus 1 to plus 1, and soak 3 are all amazing stats that any character would want. This makes Hikaru your quintessential jack of all trades, master of none, but better than a master of one. Hikaru's biggest strength is the fact that he can play almost any game against opponents. He can be fast, he can be very powerful, he can be very defensive, and he can hit you from nearly the opposite end of the board. All of that at the same time, depending on what configuration he does and what tokens he decides to anti. This is very, very good, as a brawler's main ability or main win condition is to literally abuse opponent options and then win out on them when it comes to using specific stats. Hikaru can not only do that with his styles, but he can do that with his unique ability as well, making him one of the best brawlers in the entire game. However, that does come at the cost of him being very poorly ranged. So when it comes to Hikaru, proper management of your tokens is key, and I will explain more of that in the advanced strategy section. Just know one thing, that with all of these stats at his disposal, Hikaru can almost always beat out the magic number for any stat. Any stat. Maybe except range, but any stat. And if you're wondering what magic numbers are, click this video to find out more about them, because they will help you a lot, especially when using Hikaru. Now, when it comes to Hikaru's unique ability, one important thing is bluffing. Bluffing is very important with Hikaru because, well, all of his styles are kind of samey. They kind of all do the same thing. You get and you whack things. So you want to distract or fool the opponent as to what your intentions are, and that's where bluffing comes in. I have made a video about bluffing before. You can see that here. But long story short, you're basically antiing tokens so that your opponent doesn't catch on to what you're doing. So let's say you're doing a strike. Maybe antiing power isn't a good thing, since that will signal to your opponent, oh, he's gonna strike. But maybe if you anti a priority token, he might not think you're striking. Now, this only matters if the opponent you're fighting against has anti-reactions as well, because the moment that you get to the anti-phase, you can't mess with your cards anymore. So be very careful about bluffing, especially against opponents who, well, you can't bluff in the first place. Now let's move on to the styles. Let's start off with Trance. Trance is the weird style among Hikaru's kit for 3 reasons. Number 1, it has range. Wow. Number 2, it has this weird effect that allows you to psych out your opponents and bluff them. And number 3, it doesn't have plus speed or anything that gives him more power. So what's this style all about? This style has a reveal effect that basically makes you ignore the token you anteed and return it to your pool. Meaning that you can use this to bluff your opponents out, and it's very, very good, especially if the opponent wastes a lot of their resources trying to counter your token, even if you weren't going for that thing in the first place. And as an end of beat effect, you get to regain one of your tokens. This is one of Hikaru's ways of regaining his elemental tokens, which means that this card gets a lot of play. For a character that lacks range and wants to regain tokens, this thing has it all. And when it comes to attack pairs, I highly recommend pairing it with Strike, since Strike has good enough stats and makes use of that range very well. Or Dash, because Dash, well, gets you regain a token for free by dodging your opponent. And remember, as Hikaru, token management is very, very important. Next up is Geomantic. Oh my goodness, this thing is a sleeper OP style. At first when I was using Hikaru, this didn't seem that strong until I started using it, and then it blew my mind. Not only does it have plus power, but its start of beat effect is insane. See, this basically allows you to ante an extra token on top of your attack during the start of beat phase. So note that anteing the priority here won't matter because, well, priority has already been decided. So, what's so good about this thing? It means you can ante 2 tokens in one turn. Not convinced yet? It also means that you get to see your opponent's attack pair before anteing the second token. Now, if that doesn't convince you that it's really strong, note that stuff like, well, Runica's Artifact Avarice has similar effects to this. So, and, you know, Aric's Perceptional. So what makes this really strong is basically you can see your opponent's attack pair and then pick which one of your tokens will benefit you during that beat. So for example, you reveal an attack and you find out your opponent is faster. And then he only has a power of 3 and below, and you don't have any stun guard. You can then just ante your Earth token and then gain Soak 3, and then your opponent's attack has not only been completely neutralized, you avoid being stunned, and then you whack them back for a lot of damage. If that doesn't convince you, I don't know what will. This is the clockwork shot of Hikaru. And trust me when I say that it's probably even scarier than Clockwork Shot is, because this thing is just so adaptive, it will wreck your mind. And as an added note, if you ante the power token, the fire token during the ante phase, and then play this Geomantic card, you will almost always guarantee yourself a giant payout attack that deals on average 7 damage. And if that doesn't convince you that this is Hikaru's best style, I don't know what will. When it comes to attack pairs, this thing goes very well with Shot because of the stun guard, synergizing well with the Earth token ante, or Drive because that synergizes really well with the not only the Earth token but also the Water token, since it gives you the bonus range you need just in case your opponent is barely out of range. Next up is Focus, and Focus is weird. It has plus priority and stun guard too. What? Well, aside from that, on hit it allows you to regain a token, which again is very important for Hikaru because he needs his tokens. Bad! But aside from that, it's a very powerful style. It's very fast, and it has a decent amount of defense. If the opponent is a speedster or anything like that, you'll oftentimes be able to brunt their attack with just a stun guard too. But if you do ante the Earth token, you can bring it to effective stun guard 5, which is way above magical stun guard 3. Now, when it comes to attack pairs, I highly recommend pairing this thing with Shot because it synergizes just so well with it that I will not tell you to pair it with anything else. But if you have to, Drive is also a good candidate as it makes use of the added speed very, very well. Next up is Advancing, and Advancing is insane! Not only does it have +1/+1 on its power and priority, it also has a start of beat advanced 1 space. Now, it even has more on top of that if you switch sides with the opponent, you gain power +1, meaning that it's a power +2 priority +1 style in the proper circumstances. And in the other circumstances, it technically gives you extra range should your opponent be very far away from you. Just be careful of their bursts. Now, this thing is amazing. It has a great stat line to begin with, and then if you put your elemental tokens on top of it, it just turns insane. Think an Advancing Drive or an advancing grasp, and then you anti the fire token. Now that's around 8 damage to 7 damage, depending on which of the bases you decided to put. That is crazy, and I guarantee that it can make people very scared of what you're able to do. Now when it comes to attack pairs, I highly recommend pairing this thing with your unique base Palm Strike, because if you make sure that your opponent's burst is down, Palm Strike plus this can deal a lot of damage. Just note that Palm Strike start of beat switch does not give you bonus power. I'm sorry about that. But it does allow you to regain a token and deal tons of damage, especially if you anti your fire token. On the other hand, if you want some more added range and more hit confirm, Drive is your best friend yet again because of Hikaru's lack of range. Next up is Sweeping, and Sweeping is absurdly fast. But it comes with the downside that if you take damage, you take an extra 2 points of damage. Note that is very, very bad because it might impede upon your stun guard and you might get stunned. But again, if you're being really fast this speed, I highly doubt you'll want the stun guard anyway, or you'll make use of the stun guard anyway. This thing is very good if your opponent doesn't have a lot of stun guard or soak. Almost nobody can keep up with your speed, and if you anti your fire token, or if you're really defensive, anti your earth token, you will get a positive trait with this thing, and it's really good against opponents who just have no defense at all. In terms of attack pairs, I highly suggest pairing this thing with a Drive, because a Prio 7 Drive is insane. If you anti the wind token, it becomes a Prio 9 Drive, letting you clash out opponent dashes. On the other hand, you can also pair it with a Palm Strike, because a Palm Strike not only has the extended reach from the start of beat, but it allows you to beat dashes when it comes to speed. So that's very important, as Hikaru gains access to a pseudo anti-dash card, which is very, very good, especially if the opponent starts dashing you since you're a token character. Palm Strike is basically a pseudo grasp that has a start of beat, advance 1 space, and a on damage regain token. Do know that if your opponent has a lot of soak, you won't regain your token. It's a pretty good attack, and I really like it. It just sometimes is really hard to connect with, especially if your opponent has burst. But if you really want to pair it with attacks, you should pair it with stuff like Trance or Sweeping in order to take advantage of Trance's range, or Sweeping speed. Hikaru's 2 overdrive finishers are Wrath of the Elements and 4 Winds. Wrath of the Elements is a finisher overdrive finisher. That thing will destroy people the more tokens you have. Basically, it'll anti all of your tokens onto your attack while having an attack that's melee range, 7 power, and 6 priority. That is amazing. You will, and if you have all of your tokens, it's range 0 to 2, power 10, priority 8, and has soak 3. That's insane. It'll finish off almost anyone except if they have dash, so be very careful about that. On the other hand, you have 4 Winds. 4 Winds is a comeback card. You see, it's a card that doesn't let you anti-tokens onto it, but you can repeat the attack over and over and over again for each token you don't have. This is a great way of not only getting lots of damage into your opponent, but as well as regaining all of your tokens so that the next beat, you're a force to be reckoned with. Now when it comes to using his special action, Hikaru loves using Cancel. As a brawler, you want to get rid of their options like their pesky bursts and pesky dashes, and then get in their face and destroy them. On the other hand, Hikaru doesn't like Pulse as much because, well, he really doesn't need it. He has the added range, the added movement to take care of people who are all across the board. But don't let that sway you away from using Pulse if you think that it's necessary. Because as a brawler, Hikaru just wants to adapt and play the game so that his opponent doesn't catch up. So if a Pulse will exploit your opponent's weaknesses, by all means use that Pulse. Now let's move on to the part that everybody loves, Hikaru Advanced Strategies and Combos. Hikaru Advanced Strategies can be really simplified to 2 things: token management and bluffing. Token management is very quote-unquote simple. You basically need to learn to have down beats as Hikaru. Note that even if you are a very offensive character with lots of offensive stats, sometimes using a trance strike or a trance dash to regain your token is pretty good. Or maybe even doing a focused shot without anteing anything is also pretty good. Note that as Hikaru, it's not always about anti-token every single turn. Sometimes having the option to ante your token is more powerful than anteing it on a beat that won't matter. However, be very careful of your opponent's dashes. Barely any of Hikaru's options allow him to beep out dashes, which means that if you ante a token and your opponent dashes you, you lose out on a lot of your value. So, try to avoid your opponent dashing you. At the same time, dash as many times as possible to regain as many tokens as possible. Now when it comes to number 2, bluffing, it's sort of what I've explained earlier. Just learn to not be predictable with the way your cards and tokens are. Don't always be predictable with your Geomantic because people will start dashing that thing. If you get your Geomantic into hand and you suddenly just drop a fire token, your opponent, like 9 times out of 10, will dash you. Dash you, dash you, dash you, dash you, dash you, because he knows that the Geomantic fire token plus earth or whatever is going to happen, and it's going to be terrible for them. So just don't be too predictable with your tokens, and if you're against an opponent who can ante or do stuff during the ante phase, make use of your tokens very well to bluff, especially using a trance. If you can bait your opponent into dashing a trance, that is amazing. Or if you bait them to spending all of their resources to counter your win token and then they find out you just tranced, it's one of the most amazing feelings ever, and I highly suggest doing it against opponents who are very, very all in. Let's move on to some Hikaru combos. Number 1, Geomantic shot fire token ante, because this is your clockwork shot. A lot of your game plan revolves around scaring your opponents with this attack pair. Do note that the fire ante makes it so that it's a very scary payout attack that will deal 7 damage, and then you can buff it with extra range or extra soak. Next up is Trance Strike, because Trance Strike is just really, really good on Hikaru, because it basically allows you to trade 1 turn at moderately okay range and then regain a token no matter what happens. Basically, this thing is amazing and can deal 4 damage to your opponent at stun guard 5 from range 1 to 2. It's just really good. It's a good downbeat attack, as well as makes use of Fierce Strike, which barely gets used with your other styles. And finally, we have Advancing Drive. Advancing Drive is just another one of those examples of Hikaru's great offensive skill. If you use this in melee range, it will deal a lot of damage. And if you add on your tokens like Fire Token or Wind Token, or maybe the Water Token if you're feeling that your opponent can dodge, this thing can deal so much damage. Like, so much damage, it's practically insane. But it's not as strong as your Geomantic shot, obviously, but it's still very, 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 very good. So watch out for opportunities to use this attack pair as well. And that pretty much does it for this episode of Battle Guides featuring Hikaru. If you guys like the video and want to learn more about Level 99 games, BattleCON, or maybe some of their other products, check the description out below and you can find the store, find the site for more information. If you want to join the BattleCON community or want to talk to me and the other BattleCON veterans, check the description out below and you'll find links for that. Now, if you want to email me or send me a comment or whatever, check the description out below for my email, or write in the comment section and I'll sure to answer you as soon as possible. Thank you all so much for waiting for this episode of Battle Guides. I know it was a long wait. I had tons of exams to handle and then I needed to rest because I got sick and a lot of other stuff. But I did come out with straight A's this semester, so there's that. I really am thankful for you guys for waiting for this video. I know that I uploaded the duelist video the other day or maybe just this morning or whatever, and I know that many of you might have been shocked because it's like, what's that? That video series is going to be another thing that I'm trying to do. It's way easier to make than battle guides and battle tips. Trust me, it requires way less editing and way less preparation because I don't need the entire green screen setup and all of that. So now that's pretty much it for this episode of Battle Guides. Don't forget your special action, and thank you, World of Indines. Thank you, and good night.